Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's lecture. And what we're going to be trying to accomplish today is we're going to be looking at the introduction to cellular respiration. Now, when it comes to cellular respiration, this is going to be a very, very large topic that we're going to try to break down into its overview as well as its three individual steps in order to see exactly where energy is going to be coming from, what form are we going to be using it in, and then what the actual process for cellular respiration are going to be. Now, again, this topic is going to be quite large. So again, we're going to try to break this apart into, again, the overview, which is going to be this current lecture, as well as the individual steps to cellular respiration in order to really get a good grasp and idea of exactly where that energy is and exactly how it's being produced. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, before we can even talk about cellular respiration, one of the very first things we need to identify is what is energy? Why is it so important, and why are we dedicating so much time to learn exactly what that energy is and how our body is going to use it? Well, the reason why energy is so important is just like your cell phone, your body requires this energy to function. You need energy in order to do pretty much anything. You need energy for your heart to beat. You need energy to move your muscles to either lift, run, or stand. And you also need energy in order to have brain activity. So essentially, everything you do is going to require that energy. Now, what does your body use this energy for? There's going to be three major components or three major parts that require energy. One of the very first one is just to do work. We need it in order to perform cellular work, even at rest, meaning that we need energy in order for your cells just to run and maintain themselves. We also need it to perform physical activity. So again, anytime you're doing anything, talking, breathing, thinking, moving, anything of those are going to require energy. We also need energy to control temperature. Remember, one of the most important things about our body and one of the coolest things is that it can maintain homeostasis. So we need this to either, um, you know, increase our temperature if we're trying to warm ourselves up by shivering. We might try to lower our temperature by inducing sweating in order to, again, wick away some of that heat. Again, we're trying to maintain homeostasis. We're trying to stay in that homeostatic range that's best for our bodies. So again, all of these are going to require energy in order to work. We also need energy in order to go through synthesis. Now, synthesis is just another way of saying building or creating. Now, we need that for growth. So again, anytime we're growing, we need that in order to produce more specialized cells. We need that in order to go through cellular division, mitosis, meiosis, all of those things. We also needed to maintain and repair. So again, anytime that we hurt ourselves, we get a paper cut, we skin our knees, anything like that, you are going to require energy in order to repair that, or again, just maintain your body, replace old dead cells, worn out cells, things like that. And then again, for reproduction, for meiosis, in order to produce our gametes. Storage is going to be our last one. Now, anytime we have an excess of this amount, and what I mean by that is if we consume a lot of calories, consume a lot of energy or calorically dense things, and we don't end up using all of it through our work, what's going to happen is if we don't utilize all that energy, we're going to go ahead and store it. And we have two ways of kind of storing that. Glycogen, which is going to be sugar, storages by the liver and muscles, as well as fat, again, storage by adipose tissues. So again, what does the body use energy for? Energy for work, maintaining, doing anything we need to do, synthesis, growth, maintenance and repair, reproduction, and storage as well. If we don't utilize all of this energy, again, it's going to be in the forms of our glycogen as well as fat, or in this case, our adipose tissue. So where do we get this energy from? One of the important things we need to know as humans, we are going to be considered as consumers. So the reason why we're going to be known as consumers is because we cannot produce our own energy. So what we need to do is in order to maintain our cells, in order to get energy, in order to do anything like that, or acquire that energy, we need to go ahead and eat something. So again, we need to go ahead and consume food or eat food in order to acquire the energy needed to fuel our activities. Now, this energy in food is going to be measured in our calories. So you'll hear me often say that it's high in calories or calorically dense. All that basically means is that we have food sources that are going to be high or dense in energy. So the reason why we need to know this is because energy is going to be in our biologic systems. Now, we have two types that we're going to look at. Obviously, we're going to focus a lot on our cellular respiration, but we need to kind of understand exactly where both of these are coming from and why they kind of go hand in hand. So in photosynthesis, this is going to be the process that plants are going to go through. Now, plants are going to be known as producers because they can produce their own food, or they can make their own food. So when it comes to photosynthesis, this is going to be our cellular equation. You can see we have 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O. So again, CO2 is what we breathe out, water, and they're also going to utilize solar energy in order to produce glucose, C6H12O6, and O2. So this is going to be known as our reactants because they're going to be reacting with each other, and this is going to be known as our products, what they are going to be producing. Now, these products are going to be very important, and the reason why is if you look over here, you can see that the products from photosynthesis are going to be the reactants for cellular respiration, and vice versa. The reactants here are going to be the products of what's being produced through cellular respiration. So this is why we kind of have to know a little bit about photosynthesis prior to talking about cellular respiration. So again, in photosynthesis, this is the process that plants go through. The reason why is because they are going to be known as producers, because again, they can go ahead and make their own food. They're going to do so by utilizing this photosynthesis equation. They're going to be taking their reactants, in this case, CO2 or carbon dioxide plus water and sun. And then they're going to go ahead and produce glucose and oxygen. Now, when it comes to cellular respiration, again, we eat plants or we're eating animals that are going to be eating these plants in order to acquire our energy. Remember, we need calories or something high in calories in order to produce the energy that we need in order to maintain our functions. So this is going to be known as our cellular respiration. And this is going to be the process in which cells are going to transfer energy from food to ATP. Now, ATP is going to be really important because this is going to be our energy dense molecule. Now, again, when it comes to cellular respiration, you can see we have our reactants here, and this should say C6H12O6, again, glucose, what we're getting from our products from photosynthesis. And we're going to go ahead and eat this. We're going to take in oxygen, again, one of our products from photosynthesis. So we're taking the two things that were being produced by photosynthesis, glucose and oxygen, and we're going to use that and we're going to go ahead and produce ATP, in this case, our cellular energy, as well as heat. And then we are going to release carbon dioxide and water, which are going to be the reactants or what plants need in order to go through photosynthesis. So now that we've taken a look at photosynthesis, cellular respiration, and how they kind of go hand in hand, and exactly what the reactants we're taking in and how we're producing certain things, we need to see why do we need to eat and breathe in order to stay alive. Well, obviously we need to eat and breathe because it's going to be very, very crucial to maintaining our cells and maintaining ourselves. So food is going to provide a source of energy needed to fuel our cellular work. Again, cellular work are going to be all those things just kind of staying in homeostasis and maintaining our current status or way of life. We're breathing in oxygen, and then we're going to breathe out CO2. Now remember, O2 is needed by cells to convert food energy to cellular energy. Now what that basically means is this right here. Remember, we need to breathe in oxygen in order to go through our cellular respiration. So we're breathing in this oxygen, we're eating glucose or taking in glucose in order to produce our ATP. CO2 is a waste product that must be eliminated from the body because remember, that's one of our products we're producing and we don't really need that. But in photosynthesis, they do. And then we're also converting food to cellular energy, remember that ATP, and we're also going to be creating heat. So again, we're taking in food, or in this case, C6H12O6 plus oxygen, remember O2, and then we are producing ATP, we're releasing that CO2. So we've talked a lot about this ATP. We know that it is important because we've seen it here for our cellular energy. And we've also seen it in this equation here, cellular energy. So what does that really mean? What does that really look like? Now we know ATP is going to be incredibly important because again, it's going to allow our body to go through the processes we need to help us maintain homeostasis. But what exactly is ATP? Now ATP is known as adenosine triphosphate. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of specifically look at this part because this part of our ATP is going to be important because it's going to identify exactly what type of energy we're looking at. Is it going to be our ATP, which is going to be our energy dense molecule, or is it going to be ADP, our energy, our very low energy molecule? So since it's triphosphate, that means we have three, and then we have phosphate. So we have three phosphates. So the reason why ATP is so strong is because we have three phosphates here. Now, again, you can see our adenosine, we have adenine, and then we have ribose. But we also have our three phosphates, 1, 2, and 3. And this triphosphate, again, is allowing us to have such a high densely packed molecule that's going to allow us to go through all of our cellular energy, cellular work, things like that. Now, all of these are going to be held together by our phosphate bonds. So when a phosphate bond in ATP is broken, this is where our energy is going to be released. So when this piece is broken apart, it's going to release energy, and this is the energy we're going to harness and utilize in order to go through cellular work. So let's go ahead and take a look at exactly what that looks like. Now, ATP, you can think about it kind of like a rechargeable battery. This isn't something that's a one-time use thing. It's going to be used. It's going to go through kind of a cycle. It's going to pick up a phosphate, and then it's going to go ahead and become energy dense again. So again, ATP is a rechargeable, reusable energy source that powers most cellular processes. Again, remember, it's rechargeable, reusable energy source. So again, we have our ATP here. Remember ATP, adenosine triphosphate, 1, 2, 3. We have three phosphates over here. And you can see that when it's charged, it is going to be very energy dense. So that means it's going to have tons and tons of energy in it. Now, what's going to happen? Remember, we're going to go ahead and break off one of those phosphate bonds. We're going to lose this part out, and then we're going to transform this into this right here, which is going to be known as our ADP, adenosine diphosphate. So remember, di just like a pair of dice. Now we have 1, 2 pieces. When energy is released or breaking a bond in ATP is used to power a body, and again, it's so great because it's very energy dense. But again, once we go ahead and use that, we're going to go ahead and create our ADP. ADP is going to be very low in energy. So what we essentially do is we're going to go ahead and eat food. So energy from food is used to recharge our ATP. So again, now we're going to go ahead and take this, add together a third phosphate right here. And then that's going to bring us back up here into this cycle where we have our ATP again. So again, what's happening, just to kind of summarize everything, is we have our ATP here, adenosine triphosphate. We're going to lose one of the phosphate groups or release it whenever we're using it to do cellular work. When we do cellular work, we're going to end up with ADP. ADP is going to be very low in energy, and the reason why is because we have adenosine diphosphate, two phosphate groups. Once we have this, again, we need to go ahead and recharge that because ATP is rechargeable, reusable energy source. So we're going to recharge it by using food in order to recharge that back up. Once we've done that, it's going to go ahead and add an additional phosphate group back into it, meaning now instead of ADP, we're going to end up back with ATP. All right, so this is going to be our apply your knowledge portion. So like always, I'm going to go and give everybody a couple of seconds to pause this, go ahead and give this a try, and then we'll go ahead and check this out together. All right, welcome back. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these questions. So in this case, we have a person during COVID, they decided to start a workout routine. And in this workout routine, they started to run and do yoga. So in this case, while they're exercising, the body is going to need more ATP energy. And the reason why they're going to need more energy is because we're increasing our cellular work or cellular processes. Because again, we're utilizing a lot more energy in order to elicit more movement. And because of that, we need an increased amount of ATP. While exercising, what's happening with the breathing rate? It should have increased because remember, oxygen or O2 is one of the components we need, as well as C6H12O6, or in this case, food, in order to produce our ATP. All right, so after 3 weeks on her COVID exercise routine, MP found that she has lost 8 pounds. How did increasing exercise lead to weight loss? So MP began to use more calories to produce more ATP to facilitate increased movement. So remember, in this case, one of the 3 ways that we can use energy is we're either using it to move around, but we can also store it as well. So in this case, she had some storages in the form of adipose tissue. And because we had a more increased amount of movement and a more increased amount of breathing rate, we started to utilize more of this energy. So in this case, those fat cells started to become used in order to produce more ATP. All right. So after 3 weeks of COVID exercise routine, MP also found that her appetite has increased. So why? So MP needs more calories to produce more ATP. Remember, in our cellular respiration equation, we have oxygen. We also need energy, so in this case, glucose, so C6H12O6, and this is going to give us our ATP, and then we are releasing CO2 plus H2O. Some of these are going to be our reactants. These are going to be our products. So in this case, why does she have an increased appetite? Because we are using more energy, we need more food as well as oxygen. Which of the following would provide more energy, ATP, for cellular work? So remember, we're measuring our food energy in calories, because again, we're using that food in order to produce ATP. So in this case, we need a high calorie count in order to increase the amount of glucose. So in this case, a donut has 250, pizza 300, Red Bull 168. So in this case, a coffee drink would have the most because it is 500 calories. TP ate 2,500 calories in a day, but her body only needs 2,000 calories for cellular work. What happened to the extra 500 calories of energy that didn't burn? In this case, it was stored as fat to be used later. Remember, one of the things we can do with energy is we don't utilize it all. It can be stored as fat. Finally, when a patient is dead, why does he or she feel cold? They are no longer using energy to maintain an internal heat. They are also not going through cellular respiration anymore. Because remember, when we're producing our ATP, one of the things we are releasing is going to be heat. All right, so this is going to bring us to our last 2 slides. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take a quick overview of what cellular respiration is going to be. So remember, the process of cellular respiration is how we're going to be producing ATP. Now, again, we already talked about cellular respiration and how it's going to produce energy. We've talked about the equation, and we kind of talked about why ATP is so important. Now, as we continue with our lectures, we're going to identify that we're going to have 2 different types of respiration. We're going to have aerobic respiration, which is going to require oxygen, but we're also going to have something known as anaerobic respiration. We're also going to be breaking down the steps of glucose to produce ATP. And we're going to be looking at that in step 1, glycolysis, step 2, the Krebs cycle, as well as step 3, the electron transport chain. And we're going to also see specifically which parts of these steps in cellular respiration are going to produce the most energy. So again, cellular respiration is the process by which cells transfer energy from food, primarily glucose, to ATP. Again, we're taking our food and producing ATP. Cellular respiration also produces heat. Aerobic respiration requires oxygen to produce CO2 as a waste product. So again, you can see we're eating food in as glucose plus oxygen we're breathing in, O2, and then we are releasing, because remember, these are reactants, they're reacting with each other in order to produce this as our product. So we're eating food, breathing in oxygen, and then we are releasing or breathing out CO2, and we're also releasing some water as well. And then our product that we want is going to be this right here. We want this ATP because, again, it's going to give us energy in order to move and do any of those things, and then heat to help us stay warm. So continuing with our overview, cellular respiration takes place in two parts, the cytoplasm as well as the mitochondria. In glycolysis, this is going to be an anaerobic, so this does not require O2, and it's going to generate 2 ATP. Then the stuff or the products that are being made here are going to be transferred to the Krebs cycle, which are going to be located in the mitochondria. And then once that cycle is done, it's going to take that and move it to the electron transport chain. And the end product is going to be this over here. This is going to be aerobic, so this is going to require O2, and it's going to generate 34 to 36 ATP. Now, I know that this kind of looks a little confusing, but this is still going to be in cellular respiration. Again, in the intro, what we did is we identified what energy was, we identified the equation, we identified what ATP was, and this right here is still all of that. All this is going to be a more in-depth look of exactly what's going on in glycolysis. So the first step in cellular respiration. Then we're going to look at the step 2 in the Krebs cycle, which is still part of cellular respiration. And finally, step 3, the electron transport chain, which is going to be the conclusion to cellular respiration. So again, although we have our equation, so we have C6H12O6 plus O2, and we're going to be producing ATP plus CO2 plus H2O. This equation is a quick synopsis of this entire process, which again, we're going to be covering more in our coming up lectures. All right, and that is going to conclude the introduction to cellular respiration. Again, in the following ones, we're going to look at step 1, glycolysis, step 2, Krebs cycle, and step 3, the electron transport chain. So I look forward to seeing everybody in the next coming lectures. Again, if you do have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to send me a message and ask. And again, I look forward to seeing everybody in the next lecture.